The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of the CEO's office tower, casting long reflections on the polished floor and creating a bright, almost blinding glare over the busy office space, and Sarah, a young black maid, moved quietly, her steps soft on the marble tiles as she carried the breakfast tray filled with steaming coffee, fresh orange juice, and neatly arranged pastries, careful not to spill a single drop, while the room buzzed with activity. Executives typing rapidly on laptops, speaking in hurried tones over phones, and flipping through stacks of papers, their attention entirely focused on their work, completely unaware of the subtle dangers surrounding them, including a faint, flickering shadow near the glass door that shifted unnaturally with each passing second and a loose electrical cable hanging dangerously close to the entrance where the CEO was about to walk, which could have caused a serious accident if left unnoticed. Yet nobody in the office seemed to see it. None of the high-ranking employees paused, none of the security guards looked up from their posts, and the oblivious chatter of meetings and phone calls drowned out the faint hum of the exposed wiring. But Sarah's eyes caught it immediately, a sharp sense of awareness flashing through her mind as she tightened her grip on the tray, feeling her heartbeat quicken slightly as instinct told her something was wrong, something urgent, something that could become dangerous in moments. And although she remained calm, her mind raced with possibilities, imagining what could happen if the cable sparked or if someone tripped, and she knew she had to act without alarming the executives, without causing a panic, so she moved closer to the hazard, pretending to straighten a chair near the glass wall, her movements deliberate but smooth, giving her the perfect vantage point to assess the risk while keeping the tray balanced. Her eyes flicking constantly between the shadow near the door, the dangling cable, and the CEO, who was completely unaware that his polished shoes were just inches from a potential disaster, and Sarah's breathing stayed even as the tension in the room seemed to thicken, as if the air itself sensed the threat, with the sunlight catching the faint flicker of the shadow, making it seem alive, unpredictable, almost as if it were moving on its own, and she noticed small details that everyone else missed. The slight fraying of the cable, the subtle tilt of the glass door, the soft scuff marks on the floor that hinted at previous near misses, and her mind calculated every movement, planning the best way to neutralize the danger without alerting anyone to the threat or causing them to panic, while the executives remained absorbed in spreadsheets and calls, unaware that one wrong step could have resulted in a disaster that might have injured them all or caused chaos in the office, and Sarah's instincts told her that speed, precision, and calm were the keys to preventing what could have been a serious accident, and she reminded herself to stay composed, to act with focus, and to trust the awareness she had honed over years of observing subtle changes in her surroundings, a skill that had always served her well in unnoticed moments, and now was being tested in the most critical way, as she carefully edged closer to the cable, the sunlight glinting off the polished metal surfaces around her, reflecting in the glasses of executives too absorbed in their work to notice the brewing danger, while the shadow seemed to flicker again, catching her attention and forcing her to adjust her position slightly, all the while balancing the tray and making sure nothing spilled, her muscles tense, ready to respond instantly, knowing that every second counted, and she watched as the CEO took a step forward, his attention on the papers in his hand, and Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities, realizing that she could not hesitate even for a moment because inaction could be disastrous, and with a subtle but decisive movement, she shifted her body, positioning herself between the cable and the CEO, using the tray as a shield if needed, while simultaneously reaching down to carefully move the loose cable out of the way, all without causing anyone to notice, all while maintaining the natural flow of her duties, straightening chairs, adjusting items on the tray, and making it appear as if her actions were part of normal housekeeping, and in that tense, silent moment, with the shadow flickering and the morning sun casting harsh lines across the office, Sarah executed her move flawlessly, removing the hazard just before the CEO would have stepped on it, her heart pounding with relief and quiet triumph, while the executives remained unaware of the crisis that had been narrowly avoided, and minutes later, Sarah placed the tray on the side table, stepped back, and smiled faintly to herself, knowing she had acted in time, that she had prevented potential injury or chaos, and that her sharp eyes and quick thinking had quietly saved the day, though no one in the room had noticed the danger she had seen, and the most powerful man in the office, completely oblivious, continued with his work, completely unaware that the young maid he often overlooked had just acted decisively in a moment of hidden crisis, leaving Sarah with a quiet sense of satisfaction and the knowledge that sometimes vigilance and courage appear in the most unexpected forms. The day continued, but Sarah's mind could not stop racing as she carried out her duties, moving quietly through the spacious office, polishing surfaces and tidying chairs, yet her eyes kept scanning every corner, every shadow, every detail that most people overlooked, because instinct had told her that the morning incident was only a hint of a larger danger, and now she could not ignore the subtle signs around her, the faint smell of burning plastic, the soft clicking noises coming from an unattended laptop, and the irregular vibration from a nearby server cabinet that hummed quietly but with a strange rhythm, all of which created a sense of unease she could not shake. And even as executives chatted loudly about budgets and meetings, oblivious to the potential hazards, Sarah noticed the small things others missed, the barely visible fray on an electrical cord in the corner, the slight wobble of a heavy stack of boxes near the stairwell, the way the sunlight glinted off a reflective surface that could hide movement behind it, and most importantly, she spotted the subtle movement of a shadow at the far end of the office that seemed out of place, as if someone was watching, waiting, or preparing to act in a way that could create chaos. And her heart beat faster as she realized that her instincts from earlier had not been wrong, that danger might still be near, and she needed to act carefully, calmly, but decisively, because any wrong move could put everyone at risk, including the CEO, who remained unaware of the brewing threats surrounding him. Sarah moved closer to the far corner, pretending to straighten a decorative plant, but her mind calculated every possibility, noting the angle of the shadow, the distance to the nearest exit, and the safest route to intervene if necessary, while still maintaining the appearance of a calm and ordinary maid, unremarkable, unnoticed, yet fully aware, and as she edged forward, she noticed a small device partially hidden behind a cabinet, blinking faintly in a color that suggested it was active, and she knew immediately that this could be part of a more serious risk, perhaps a hidden camera, a triggering mechanism, or something that could cause harm if left unchecked, and her pulse quickened as she formulated a plan to neutralize the danger without alarming anyone. Meanwhile, the executives continued their meetings, laughing and gesturing without noticing the tension building silently across the room, and the CEO moved toward his desk, brushing past the area where Sarah had seen the hidden device, completely unaware of the threat inches away, and she realized that she had only moments to act, that hesitation could result in an accident or worse, and she had to trust her training, her observation skills, and her quick thinking to prevent disaster. Sarah reached into a nearby drawer and pulled out a thick cloth, a small pair of scissors, and a flashlight, all items that might help her neutralize any potential hazard, and she crouched slightly, moving carefully so that her actions appeared casual and part of her normal duties, while her eyes never left the device or the shifting shadows, noting the faint movement behind the reflective glass of the CEO's office and the unusual angle of sunlight that could reveal more than the executives realized, and she realized that timing, precision, and discretion were essential, that her life and the safety of everyone in the office depended on her ability to act swiftly and quietly. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as she approached the device, carefully lifting it with the cloth to avoid triggering any sparks or alarms, examining it quickly with a flashlight, and identifying it as a minor electrical hazard left unnoticed, but one that could have caused a serious fire or disrupted critical office equipment if ignored, and as she neutralized it, she felt a mixture of relief and adrenaline, knowing that her vigilance had again prevented potential disaster. Yet she remained alert, sensing that the shadow she had noticed earlier still lingered, suggesting that someone, or something, was still present and observing, and she needed to remain calm and ready to respond if the situation escalated. After securing the device, Sarah slowly straightened, placing the items back and resuming her normal movements, walking past the CEO as if nothing had happened, her eyes subtly scanning the office, noting every detail, while inside she felt a quiet pride in her ability to perceive danger and act decisively, a skill honed by years of attention and observation, often unnoticed, often unappreciated, but now critically important, and she realized that her awareness, focus, and courage had prevented what could have been a costly and dangerous event, leaving her silently confident that she had once again protected the CEO and everyone in the office without drawing attention to herself, and she moved toward the break room, taking a moment to breathe, knowing that her instincts and actions had made a difference, and that the smallest details often held the greatest risks, waiting for someone alert enough to notice and act, someone like her, whose careful eyes and quiet presence could avert disaster in ways that nobody else could even imagine. The CEO stayed a few steps back, quietly observing the scene, his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. He had visited countless hospitals and seen many children smile, yet there was something different about this moment. The boy's laughter was genuine and free, spilling over like sunlight into every corner of the hallway, and the cleaning lady's calm, gentle movements seemed almost magical. Her worn clothes and simple tools could have made anyone overlook her, but here she was, completely focused on the child, creating joy out of nothing more than bubbles and kindness. The CEO's curiosity grew stronger, and he found himself stepping closer, careful not to startle the boy or the woman. He watched as the boy's small hands darted through the air, trying to catch the floating bubbles, his eyes wide and sparkling with excitement. The cleaning lady continued to blow the bubbles, smiling softly, her eyes twinkling with satisfaction as she watched him play. He laughed freely, a sound so pure that it seemed to make the entire hallway brighter, and the CEO could not help but be drawn into the moment, forgetting for a few minutes the business deals and meetings that normally consumed his mind. He leaned against a wall, his thoughts racing. Who was this woman? How could someone so ordinary, so unassuming, have such an extraordinary impact on a child who had been sad for weeks? He had always believed that influence came from power, wealth, or skill, but here was proof that the smallest acts of kindness could change lives more than money ever could. The boy's parents watched in awe, unable to hide their emotions, and the CEO noticed how much hope and gratitude filled their faces. Even the nurses, who had seen countless patients, were taken aback by the sight, exchanging silent glances that spoke volumes about the unusual power of the moment. Finally, the CEO decided to speak, but he wanted to do it carefully, so as not to interrupt the delicate balance of joy in the hallway. He cleared his throat softly, and the cleaning lady looked up, her smile gentle and welcoming, yet she did not pause her work. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "I couldn't help but notice what you're doing here. You've brought happiness to this boy in a way no one else has." She looked at him, tilting her head slightly, still smiling. "I just wanted him to be happy," she replied softly. Her humility struck him deeply. She said it as if it were the simplest thing in the world, yet he knew it was far from simple. "You've done something incredible," he continued. "I've seen many people try to help, but you," he paused, searching for the right words, "you've done it without asking for anything, without seeking attention, just pure kindness. That is rare." The cleaning lady's eyes widened slightly, a hint of surprise crossing her features, but she nodded humbly. "I just wanted him to smile," she said again. The CEO felt a wave of respect and admiration that he could not ignore. He stepped a little closer, careful to stay out of the boy's way, and watched as another stream of bubbles floated through the air. The boy leaped, giggling, trying to touch each one, and the sight made the CEO think about the power of small, unnoticed acts. He realized that influence, impact, and greatness did not always come from wealth or titles. Sometimes it came from a simple, selfless act, performed quietly and sincerely. He studied the woman more closely, the lines on her face that spoke of hard work, the gentle strength in her movements, the patience she showed in making sure every bubble reached the boy. He wondered what her life had been like, what struggles she had endured, and how she had developed this ability to bring joy to someone else despite having so little herself. Every detail impressed him, and the suspense grew in his mind. Could such a simple person really hold so much power over hearts and emotions? The boy laughed again, louder this time, almost as if he had forgotten the sickness and tiredness that had kept him down for weeks. The cleaning lady's eyes sparkled as she watched, knowing that her small gesture had worked, and the CEO felt a mix of awe and curiosity. He wanted to know her story, to understand how someone so humble could inspire joy so effortlessly. Around them, the hallway seemed to pause, people moving quietly, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. The air felt lighter, warmer, filled with hope, and the CEO realized that this moment was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. He stepped a little closer, speaking softly so as not to disrupt the delicate atmosphere. "I would like to know your story," he said gently. "You have a gift, a way of bringing happiness that is rare. Please, tell me, who are you?" The cleaning lady paused, looking at him, then at the boy, and smiled humbly. "I am just a worker here," she said. "I clean the floors, push the mop, and sometimes, I try to make someone smile. That's all." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight far beyond her modesty. The CEO's heart was struck. Here was someone who had nothing materially, yet held a power greater than wealth or influence, the power to touch hearts, to create joy, and to inspire change with just a small act of kindness. Suspense hung in the air. Who was she really, and what would become of this moment that had already changed the boy, the parents, the staff, and even the wealthy CEO who had stumbled upon it? As he watched, he felt certain that this simple encounter, this quiet act of generosity, would ripple outward, leaving marks on lives far beyond what anyone could imagine. And in that hospital hallway, amid laughter, glistening bubbles, and the hum of activity, a small miracle had quietly begun to unfold. The tension in the office remained nearly invisible to everyone except Sarah as she continued her rounds, but inside her chest, her heart pounded with urgency, her mind racing through countless scenarios of what could happen if she did not act quickly, and yet she moved with calm precision, balancing the breakfast tray in her hands while her eyes darted toward the flickering shadow near the glass door and the dangling cable she had noticed earlier. Realizing that time was running out and that a single wrong move could turn the morning into chaos, she remembered the hum of the electrical lines, the faint sizzling sound from a loose connection, and the slight smell of burnt insulation, all signs that a spark could happen at any moment, and as she approached the CEO, who remained engrossed in his tablet, completely unaware that danger was just inches from him, Sarah made a decision, one that required courage, focus, and instant action, because waiting, hesitating, or calling attention to herself could make the situation worse, and she knew that she had to rely on her instincts and experience to prevent a catastrophe. As she edged closer, pretending to arrange the chairs and straighten papers, she calculated the best way to intervene without alarming the executives or causing them to panic, all while keeping the tray perfectly balanced, each step measured and precise, and she noticed how the sunlight reflected off the glass walls, creating distracting glares, yet she did not falter, understanding that every detail mattered in this moment, that a misstep could lead to sparks, fire, or injury, and that her ability to remain calm and observant was the only thing standing between order and disaster. Sarah's gaze shifted to the cable, noticing how it swayed slightly with the movement of air from the ceiling vents, how its copper wires glinted dangerously, and how a single touch could ignite a small fire or trip the CEO if he stepped on it unknowingly, and in that instant, her mind raced through her options, weighing the risk of rushing directly to it versus distracting the CEO to move him safely while she secured the hazard. And she realized that speed and discretion were critical, that her actions needed to be invisible yet effective, precise yet silent, and that only she could make the right decision in those tense moments. With a deep breath, Sarah carefully set the tray on a nearby side table, pretending to adjust a chair while inching toward the cable, keeping her movements fluid and natural, all while maintaining the appearance of routine, ordinary activity, and no one around her noticed the tension coiling like a spring in her body, the adrenaline heightening her focus as she approached the potential danger, ready to act with split-second timing to prevent disaster. And her eyes flicked one last time to the CEO, who remained blissfully unaware, typing notes on his tablet and completely immersed in his morning routine, oblivious to the risk that hovered just inches from him. Then, with decisive calm, Sarah used the thick cloth she had noticed near the trash bin earlier, wrapping it around the cable to prevent contact and secure it temporarily, her fingers steady, her movements smooth and controlled, and she carefully pulled it out of the walking path, ensuring the CEO would not step on it, all without drawing any attention, while her eyes scanned the shadow once more, noticing that it had shifted slightly but seemed to retreat as if her awareness alone had diminished its presence, and she realized the danger had been a combination of negligence and timing, but her quick thinking had neutralized it before any harm could occur. The executives looked up for a moment, sensing that something unusual had happened but unable to identify it, their attention drawn briefly to the adjusted chair or the neatly arranged papers, and Sarah smiled faintly inside, knowing that her intervention had gone unnoticed yet had been completely effective, a silent victory that only she understood, a life-saving action carried out with calm, skill, and courage. After ensuring the hazard was fully neutralized, Sarah resumed her duties as if nothing had happened, walking past the CEO with a faint nod, her heart still beating fast from the rush of adrenaline, knowing that she had averted a potential disaster that no one else could have seen coming, and the shadow near the door had disappeared entirely, leaving only the ordinary hum of office activity, but Sarah's mind remained alert, understanding that vigilance, observation, and courage could prevent calamity, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room could make the most significant difference, a lesson she had quietly proven without anyone realizing the impact of her actions, leaving the CEO and his executives completely unaware of just how close they had come to danger, and that only Sarah's quick thinking, calm demeanor, and sharp perception had saved the day, earning her a place in the quiet history of the office as the unseen guardian who acted decisively when it mattered most. Later that day, after the office had settled from the morning chaos that no one fully realized had almost occurred, the CEO, Mr. Thompson, found himself sitting alone in his corner office, the sunlight now soft and warm through the tall glass windows, reflecting off the polished floor and casting long, calm shadows, and yet his mind was unsettled, recalling a strange feeling he had experienced earlier, a subtle sense of danger that he couldn't explain, a fleeting awareness that something had been wrong but had disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, and he could not shake the curiosity that tugged at him, wondering how it was that the office had continued without incident when, somehow, a catastrophe had been narrowly avoided, and he knew instinctively that someone must have acted with remarkable awareness and precision to prevent it. Mr. Thompson called Sarah into his office, a young black maid who had quietly gone about her duties all morning, carrying trays, straightening chairs, and moving through the bustling office as if she were invisible, and he observed her carefully as she stepped into the room, her posture calm, her eyes alert but composed, and he realized in that instant that this seemingly ordinary maid might hold answers to a mystery he could not ignore, and he felt both curiosity and admiration rising within him. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady but filled with genuine interest, "I need to know how you saw what nobody else did this morning. Tell me exactly what happened." Sarah hesitated for a moment, understanding the importance of her words, the weight of her actions, and the fact that her explanation could change how the CEO and everyone else viewed her, but she spoke clearly, calmly, and honestly, describing the flickering shadow, the loose cable, the small signs of danger she had noticed, and how she had acted decisively to prevent a potential accident without alarming anyone, all while balancing the breakfast tray and maintaining her duties. And Mr. Thompson listened intently, his eyes widening as he pieced together the events, realizing the depth of her observation, the quickness of her decision, and the courage it had taken to act in a situation that most people would not even recognize as dangerous until it was too late. Sarah explained how years of careful attention to detail, mindfulness, and instinct had allowed her to notice subtle irregularities in her environment, to predict potential hazards before they became immediate threats, and to act in a precise, controlled manner, and Mr. Thompson felt a growing sense of respect and awe, understanding that this young maid's quiet vigilance had saved him, the executives, and the entire office from possible harm, and that her actions demonstrated a rare combination of intelligence, courage, and composure that few people could match. As she spoke, he realized that the office culture, which often overlooked employees in minor positions, had underestimated the value of perspective from those who moved quietly through the background, and he felt a pang of humility, recognizing that leadership often meant listening, observing, and learning from every individual, regardless of status, because insight and wisdom could come from anyone, at any level, and in moments where quick thinking mattered most. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face, and said softly, almost to himself, "You have a gift, Sarah. You saw danger when no one else could. You acted when no one else would. That takes skill, courage, and awareness beyond ordinary comprehension," and for the first time, he truly saw her not just as a maid, but as a person whose mind, instincts, and judgment could influence outcomes in ways that could change the course of the day, the office, and even lives. Sarah nodded, acknowledging the praise without arrogance, explaining that she simply did what anyone with attention and care could do, but Mr. Thompson knew it was far more than that. It was the combination of focus, intuition, and bravery that had made the difference, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude, realizing that her actions had prevented what could have been a disaster, and that her vigilance was a reminder of the power of quiet heroes, of those who act decisively when others are blind to danger, and of the importance of valuing every individual's perspective and capabilities, no matter how unnoticed they might be. As the conversation continued, Mr. Thompson asked Sarah to share more about how she trained herself to observe so carefully, to trust her instincts, and to act without hesitation, and Sarah spoke about patience, mindfulness, and paying attention to details that most people ignore, from the smallest flicker of movement to the slightest irregularity in her surroundings. And Mr. Thompson realized that her approach could serve as a lesson not only for him but for the entire company, a principle that could prevent mistakes, accidents, and oversights in the future, and he made a mental note to implement practices that would encourage awareness and vigilance among all employees, inspired by Sarah's example. By the end of their discussion, Mr. Thompson felt profoundly changed, recognizing that her quick thinking, courage, and careful observation had saved the day, and that her actions provided a lesson that extended far beyond a single office or a single incident, teaching him that attentiveness, bravery, and initiative could come from anyone, anywhere, and that the quiet, unassuming individuals in a workplace might possess the insight and courage to make extraordinary impacts in moments that truly matter, leaving him speechless, humbled, and motivated to ensure that people like Sarah were noticed, valued, and trusted in every critical situation. And he knew that from this day forward, he would never overlook the power of vigilance, attention, and courage, no matter where it came from or who it came from in his company. Days turned into weeks after Sarah's recognition, yet the lessons of her quick thinking and courageous actions lingered strongly within the walls of the office, subtly changing the way everyone worked, thought, and observed their surroundings. Executives who had once ignored small details now paused to notice tiny inconsistencies, minor hazards, and unusual behavior, realizing that what seemed insignificant could sometimes become dangerous, and that attention, awareness, and vigilance were just as important as strategy, planning, or authority. And Sarah, quietly moving through the office as she had always done, noticed the shift with a sense of quiet satisfaction, understanding that her small act of courage had not only saved lives and property but had also created a ripple effect, inspiring her colleagues to be more observant, responsible, and proactive in ways that might prevent future problems before they even arose. Mr. Thompson, the CEO, personally began consulting Sarah for advice on office layout, safety measures, and even small operational details, recognizing that her perception, careful observation, and attention to small risks were invaluable tools for the company's success and safety. And he often paused to watch her work, marveling at how she could notice what others completely missed, how her instincts were precise, and how her calm under pressure made her uniquely capable of responding effectively to threats that most people would ignore or overlook. And slowly, the culture of the office began to shift, valuing mindfulness, focus, and initiative, not just rank or experience. Employees at all levels started paying more attention to their surroundings, reporting hazards before accidents could occur, and thinking critically about the small details that could have a large impact on safety and efficiency. Inspired by Sarah's example, and she became an unspoken mentor in the office, teaching others through her quiet presence and careful actions, demonstrating the importance of vigilance and proactive thinking without needing to speak loudly or demand attention, proving that true influence and leadership can emerge from anyone willing to act responsibly and thoughtfully. Sarah herself reflected often on the morning that had changed everything, recalling how a flickering shadow, a loose cable, and her ability to notice what others missed had not only prevented disaster but had also transformed the way people in the office viewed responsibility, courage, and attention to detail. And she realized that the lessons she had imparted went far beyond mere safety. They were about awareness, confidence in one's instincts, and the understanding that even small actions could have profound consequences, sometimes saving lives, sometimes changing company culture, and sometimes inspiring others to become better versions of themselves in ways that could never be measured by titles, salaries, or recognition alone. Mr. Thompson, watching this transformation unfold, often called meetings to discuss how observation, mindfulness, and initiative could be integrated into training sessions, team-building exercises, and daily routines, always referencing Sarah's actions as the perfect example of how one person, regardless of their role, could influence an entire organization. And he made it a point to encourage all employees to notice the unnoticed, speak up when necessary, and act decisively when circumstances demanded it, creating an environment where attentiveness and courage were respected as much as intelligence or experience, and where heroes could emerge quietly, unexpectedly, and effectively. Sarah continued to move gracefully through her workday, cleaning, organizing, and observing, her presence now appreciated not just for efficiency but for the quiet power of her insight and courage. And she remained humble, knowing that her actions were small compared to the broader impact they had created, yet confident that she had shown the office the importance of vigilance, attention, and bravery, leaving a lasting impression on everyone she encountered, including executives, security personnel, and her fellow staff members, who now understood that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they trusted their instincts, stayed alert, and acted with integrity. By the end of each day, as she quietly returned to her small apartment after a long shift, Sarah reflected on the way her actions had not only prevented potential harm but had taught a lesson that would continue to influence the office for months, perhaps years, to come, reminding her that courage, awareness, and the willingness to act decisively could ripple through the lives of others in ways far beyond what anyone could see, and that sometimes the quietest, humblest individuals were capable of the most powerful, life-saving impact, leaving a legacy of vigilance, courage, and proactive thinking that no recognition or award could ever fully capture, yet one that would forever change the company culture and inspire everyone to notice the details that mattered, act when it was needed, and trust that even small, thoughtful actions could have monumental consequences, a lesson Sarah had embodied flawlessly and quietly, leaving the entire office safer, more aware, and motivated to become better, inspired by the example of a single, extraordinary maid who had acted when it mattered most.